Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. Let's first talk about former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani has admitted to lying about the elections fraud of 2020, that big campaign, but more importantly, how he has smeared the character of two Black Georgia election workers. We'll talk a little bit about that. Also, when Black women are coming out and saying that they're feeling emotionally unsafe in the workplace. We'll talk about what that means for the state of the market. And then later, our big culture convo is about Barbie, folks, how Black women are showing that they are not just drawn to the character, but also are empowered by the character. We'll talk a little bit about this latest trend. So stay with us, that and a whole lot more in today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation here on Black Star Network. Folks, we are streaming live right now on blackstarnetwork.com, blackstarnetwork.com, blackstarnetwork.com. And we're also streaming, of course, on Amazon Music for your Roku TV. Now, if you want to join us in the conversation, we have discussions like no other here on any other digital platform. You can do so by checking us out on YouTube as we're streaming live on that platform, as well as Facebook on there. But on YouTube, you can go to Roland Martin's YouTube page, right? That's right. Just go Roland Martin and then click on the link as we are streaming live. And guess what? You can join the conversation as a member of today's culture crew. Big shout out to my OG culture crew members, my legacy culture crew members that are checking in right now, folks. And I'm seeing you. I got you. There we go. Getting the conversation started already, jumping in there. Deidre, I see you. Deidre Hall, my sister. Tiana, my sister, thank you for checking in. Pretty Brown Mimi, 726. Hi, Pretty Brown Mimi. I'm ready for what you got to say today. And I see so many other folks are checking in. Cindy D. Cindy, thank you so much. Hello, Cindy. And I see a couple other folks. Vic Abraham, good afternoon, Vic. Good to connect with you, bro. Also, I see my sister Suzette Speaks, who we're going to get to in a quick moment here, who's joining us in the chat. And folks, you want to do the same. Again, we're streaming live on YouTube. Just go to Roland Martin's YouTube page, and guess what? You can jump in and be a part of today's conversation. All right, folks, let's do this. First discussion. Normally, I haven't been talking about President Trump and his band of misfits and cronies. But today I just thought this was an interesting topic because one of the things that struck me most about this whole drama and ordeal around the big lie for President Trump was the story of two Black Georgia election workers who were brought to the stand during, y'all remember this, these are the two sisters who were just working the polls down in Georgia during the 2020 election. And how they had talked about their stories. We're talking about Miss Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. This is a mother-daughter duo who was brought to the stands for the January 6th committee hearings. And they told their story of how they were vilified, harassed, criticized, ostracized, put on blast on social media and other spaces. And they have not lived a peaceful life since President Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and others have decided to target them for simply doing their job as election workers and officials, targeting them, making them the face of their attacks against the 2020 election and what President Trump and Rudy Giuliani and all of those folks deem as being unfair. And so these two Black women gave their story, and I never forget how emotional, there's a picture of our sister, how emotional they were and how they talked about the level of harassment around this big lie that the 2020 election was rigged and that they were the key conspirators in this whole process. Y'all remember that? Y'all remember that? Let me share with you what CNN put it out there because now Rudy Giuliani concedes that he did make, in fact, defamatory statements about these two black women. Let's go to the report here from CNN. Take a look, folks. Rudy Giuliani is said that he conceded he made these defamatory statements about Georgia election workers Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss in an effort to resolve their lawsuit against him and to satisfy a judge who has considered sanctioning him. This is from CNN. In their complaint, both Shay Moss and Rudy Freeman accused Giuliani of scapegoating them in a fabricated effort to undermine how votes were counted in Georgia in 2020. Wow. He used them as the scapegoat. They became the face of the attacks. Now, let me share this other point with you from the same report, and then we're going to jump to our sister Suzette Speaks. The mother-daughter duo have been candid about how their lives were impacted by Trump and Giuliani's claims that they were guilty of election fraud. I'm looking at the second part here, folks. There is no way, nowhere I feel safe, nowhere. Do you know how it feels to have the president of the United States target you? This is Ms. Ruby Freeman saying last year in a video testimony to the House Select Committee that investigated January 6th. She said her privacy was destroyed when she learned that Giuliani had accused her mother, Ruby Freeman, of passing some kind of USB drive to her, like, quote, like vials of cocaine or heroin as part of an elaborate vote stealing scheme. In reality, the object in question was a ginger mint, she said. In her controversial call, when he asked Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, to find votes, Trump attacked Moss 18 times, and the former president called Freeman a professional vote scammer and a hustler. Wow. Look what do they say? The pot calling the kettle black. Wow. Two black women who were humiliated, embarrassed, and have been harassed by President Trump and his band of cronies. All right, let me bring in my sister Suzette Speaks in to talk about this. We could talk about the legal side, we could talk about the cultural side, and of course the big lie. My sister Suzette Speaks. Y'all make sure y'all check her out on Suzette Speaks Show on YouTube. She's streaming there, and of course follow her on all social media. And of course, you can find her every Wednesday here on The Culture. Suzette, good afternoon. How you doing? How you feeling?
It's fantastic. You know, we keep it hot here in Miami, so I was sweating earlier this morning, but doing very well. Happy to be here, and shout out to the Culture crew.
Oh, absolutely. Real quick, I read that Miami heat is so hot that the water itself is over 100 degrees and feel like, this is no joke, they said this in a report, hot tub levels.
Oh, absolutely. I'm probably going swimming with my niece over my brother's house. And trust me, that water is hot. It's so crazy. But yeah, we get it. We get it, to the boiling point here. So yeah, it's not cool anymore in our pools at our beaches, etc. But yeah, we try to make do.
Wow, that's crazy. All right, let's talk a little bit about this situation with Rudy Giuliani and our two black Georgia election workers. This situation, of course, like I said, this out of all of the here and there, like one or two testimonies that really struck the chord with me. This one was the one of them. The other one was the guy, one of the January 6th participants talking about he lost everything in his life. Okay. But this one here really struck a chord because these two black women didn't call for this. All they simply was doing was volunteering their time to just do the work that a lot of us ask for us to do, get involved in the system, be an election judge, be present on the day of history and all of those things. But these two black women were dragged through the mud by Trump and Giuliani. And now it comes out that he, in fact, admits to lying and essentially orchestrating a smear campaign that went to the highest level at that time to President Trump, where they became the face of the election fraud situation in Georgia. What do we make of this?
This is a part victory for these ladies, and I want to say their courage and their tenacity should be applauded. For them bringing this federal defamation lawsuit, they have now set the grounds, and Mr. Giuliani's legal team has since conceded that there was defamation that in fact took place, that Giuliani, throughout his tenure as an attorney for former President Donald J. Trump, was using these ladies as a scapegoat. We know that even a month ago, they were just, again, cleared of any possibility of wrongdoing in the 2020 elections. And yet again, Mr. Giuliani has now been held to account for possibly ruining their lives. We're looking at the elements of defamation, and I wanted to share with the audience, just because I had to go back on my legal knowledge here and as an attorney in terms of what has happened here in this trial. So first and foremost, we have to have 5 different elements in most defamation cases. And one is that a false statement was in fact made, and that is what Mr. Giuliani is conceding, that the statement was communicated to a third party, that the defendant was negligent, this is where he's not conceding, or acted with absolute malice in determining the truth of the statement, that the statement was not in fact privileged, which is what he's arguing, that in fact it is a free speech protection, which we can get into, and the statement caused, and this is the part where we will now move forward in this case, whether or not it caused damages. Now, as you stated in their testimony during the January 6th hearing, we cannot forget these 2 patriots who were placed in the bullseye of the Republican Party, specifically Donald Trump and Mr. Giuliani, in terms of trying to fabricate this lie that somehow they were working nefariously to interject and to displace the true winner of the Georgia elections as far as the presidential election. But we know the truth. We know per phone calls that were recorded to the Georgia Supervisors of Elections office and Mr. Raffensperger asking the officials to find a certain amount of votes so that Mr. Trump could be deemed the winner. We know who in fact was trying to do election rigging. So the irony and the despicableness of this type of allegation that went on for quite some time, to the point where, as you've stated, these 2 ladies, their lives were totally interrupted in the worst and the most serious ways. They were targeted. They were receiving death threats. They were not able to go out and just live. And again, they were just volunteering, what we need people to do in our elections processes. So the fact that they had the courage to not just let this go, to file a federal defamation lawsuit and to seek damages to hold Mr. Giuliani accountable, I couldn't be happier with this first step on their way to finding justice.
All right, we want to take a quick pause, but when we come forward, Suzette, I want to get your take on, do you think they have a case here? And I mean, he admits to lying, so I think that helps a lot in proving that the intention of his intention. But do they have a case still where where they want to get, they're awarded some money? Or, I mean, I don't want just an apology from Rudy Giuliani. That doesn't mean shit. I'm talking about something tangible to walk away from this whole experience from. So I want to get your take on that. Crew, I want to hear from you. What's your take on this as we're talking about Rudy Giuliani and his despicable, disgusting characterization of 2 Black Georgia election workers from the 2020 election? Join us in the conversation. We're streaming live right now on YouTube under Roland Martin's YouTube page, and I would love to connect with you. Stay with us. Still got a lot to get to in this first hour of the culture here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause to too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been talking about former New York City mayor and attorney Rudy Giuliani, how he has admitted or conceded to making some defamatory statements about two Black Georgia workers during their campaign to try to, quote unquote, prove that there was some election fraud happening down in Georgia during the 2020 election. If you remember, these are the two Black women that President Trump and Giuliani both targeted in their attempt to create some discord and to really try to get their way in the state of Georgia. And so we're seeing that the former mayor has said that he, in fact, admitted to lying and making some defamatory statements, calling them everything from a hustler to, as President Trump said, professional scammers, and just doing all matters of ill will to try to discredit two Black women who simply are just trying to do their part for the election season. They were just election judges. They were just helping counting the ballots. And Trump and Giuliani made a whole campaign to try to destroy their character. And as a result of that, both of these Black women have decided to file a lawsuit, a federal lawsuit, and at the same time have talked about the just harrowing experience of trying to live their life, even though the former president of the United States put a big X on their back, especially in the state of Georgia. Let me bring my sister Suzette Speaks back into this. Suzette, this is the real thing. This all happened in Georgia. And so there's a lot of support for Trump down in Georgia. There's a lot of ill will for Black folks in Georgia, you know what I'm saying, outside of some of the, and outside of Atlanta and some of the other metro parts of the state. So my question is, do you think that this lawsuit is going to lead to some sort of justice for our sisters, Shay Moss and Miss Ruby Freeman?
I do believe so. I think they do have those 5 elements that I outlined. And I just want to correct the record for what I was referring to when President Trump made the call to, and it was Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, asking him to find a certain amount of votes, thousands of votes, so that he could win the election. So we know, in fact, that there was a call that was made to, in fact, tamper with the outcome of what voters actually wanted, and that was made by the former president. Now, back to this case, when we're looking at the elements, I think they do have a strong, very strong case in terms of proving damages. But what I would caution everybody to review is that there are documents that Mr. Giuliani's legal team has been willfully, I believe, and they are saying in this filing that they just made on Tuesday night that they have not purposefully withheld any documentation that would be requested by Ms. Moss and Ms. Freeman's legal team. But in fact, he has been withholding certain documentation. He's blaming the investigations that are ongoing by Jack Smith and others who have retrieved documents also with regards to what happened in Georgia and his role and what the president also did in terms of trying to sway this election or make it look as if it was stolen when in fact it wasn't. But whether or not those documents will lead to further information that could strengthen their case is a question that still remains. So I think in terms of evidence production and what Mr. Giuliani's legal team is actually giving to the legal team of Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss will make a big difference in terms of proving the second and third element of defamation. So in terms of damages, I think they do have a very strong case, as you've outlined when we listened to their moving testimony during the January 6th hearings, that their lives were turned upside down. They couldn't work. They couldn't go out. So I think there's a very strong case for damages as far as their reputation and their quality of life and the impact that these false statements had on them as individuals, as well as then their economic status, as well as their mental state. So yes, there are some elements that I think might be a little bit more in the gray as to whether the statement was privileged or not. And again, this argument that it was protected free speech. I think there will be a lot of pushback to that by the Moss and Freeman legal teams, that you can't just outwardly lie on someone and call it free speech and therefore it is protected. I'm not as familiar with the case law there on defamation. However, they're going to argue again, the fact that he knew that what he was saying was wrong, that he conceded now that those statements were made, that they were in fact untrue, that they were relayed to a third party, that in fact, I think they can prove that they were made with malice or malicious intent, and that it was not privileged. So I think we'll see the case hang on whether or not this so-called protected speech, First Amendment argument that the Giuliani team is really grasping at straws for will hold. But I do think the scales of justice are leaning far more into the direction of Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss.
All right, so how much are we talking? And the crew members are checking in on this. Suzette, they're asking the question. Sonia, you said those ladies should be compensated for the damages, the distress, and the harm to their lives have caused. Pretty Brown Mimi 726. Thank you, Sonia, for checking in. Mimi, you said Farajii, will Miss Ruby and daughter be legally compensated for Giuliani's lies? So there should be, based upon what you're saying, the case is strong enough to lead to some compensation. But is it like break the bank type of compensation for those punitive damages, or is that going to be like a couple of $1,000?
Well, most likely, and again, I have not seen that amount as far as what they have pled in terms of what they filed to request as far as what the compensation should be. But again, this is not criminal, this is civil. So it would not be in the realm of jail time, et cetera. I saw some comments in the chat, just wanted to clarify. This is one party, an individual citizen suing another. So it would be in the form of monetary damages, whether it be in the millions, et cetera, would be up to the judge in terms of the final determination if there is a finding of guilt. But it just depends on, again, that we're kind of step away from that. We have to first find, whether or not all the elements of defamation have been met, right, in terms of what the evidence shows, and then we'll get to the damages. But yes, in fact, damages will be what will be rewarded. As far as the amount, I'm not entirely certain.
Shalinda, you checked in and said absolutely, positively, unequivocally, they should be compensated and given a public apology from these lying Republicans. Well, I don't think they're going to get a public apology. This might be the closest to a public apology that they can expect from a lying Republican. But in mass, no. From Trump, hell no. They ain't getting no apology from that joke. Tia, thank you so much, Yolanda. This TMZ, you checked in. You said if they will get Giuliani's New York City home, Dump has reportedly stopped paying him his legal fees since 2020, talking about Trump and that relationship. I don't know where the relationship stands, Suzette, between him and Giuliani and Trump at this point. You know what I mean?
It has cost him a lot. It has cost him so very much. I mean, he's looking at possibly, his bar license being put in jeopardy before knowingly lying, which we're not supposed to do as attorneys. Of course, we are supposed to protect the truth and stand for the truth. So there's been a high cost to his association and representation of former President Trump.
Absolutely. Pauline, you said they should be awarded monetary damages. These ladies' lives were put in danger. They could have been killed. Facts. That's the thing. Like, I get all the compensation talk. Then in Georgia, this is Trump people. This is not a situation where they feel safe. And I don't know if they live in Atlanta, if they live in another part of the county, where they personally live. But people know how to get information in this day and time.
Oh yeah, they were doxxed. Their information was put out there. They were definitely in bodily harm, in peril of bodily harm. Yeah.
I hope they move. I'm gonna be honest with you. I hope the sisters move from Georgia. I hope they really move, because it's no point for you to stick around, right, while people are harassing you. They know your name. I mean, you can go to a damn Starbucks and they'll be like, "Oh, you that." You know what I'm saying? You're going to have to create a life in someplace else. You go to some other part of the country where this is not a big deal. But I hope they find some peace and solace in this whole situation. Let's go back to the crew. You said crew. Oh, Janelle, you said I'm from Brooklyn. Giuliani has a long history of anti-Black Semitism, racism. Get a clue? Absolutely. Absolutely.
What a fall from the America's mayor during 9/11 to where we see him now. It is incredible.
Well, let me tell you something. It's interesting because even during that period, it was still, and this is something that I see in American politics in general, that when you have those national moments, like what we saw with 9/11, that was a big moment, of course, but it still doesn't erase all of that preceded that moment, and damn sure doesn't set the precedence for what comes after that moment. You know what I'm saying? Like Giuliani.
We remember that. Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Giuliani was so busting heads, and there are a number of cases out of New York City where there was police brutality under his leadership. There was the stop and frisk policies. There were a number of things that were happening where Black and brown folks in New York City were suffering under this dude. And then it's like when a national tragedy like 9/11 happened, everybody's like, "Oh, let's galvanize around this person." And it's like, that's why America has such a short attention span, and we don't remember anything because the propaganda starts flooding in. And then next thing you know, the rebranding of a person who was a detriment to Black and brown communities starts to happen. And now we're supposed to galvanize, and we're supposed to support this person. That's one of the big issues that I have about American politics. It's contingent upon how much we remember versus how much we actually, are not exposed to. And I think that's the work. It works for them, but it can't no longer be the case for us as a people. What's your take on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think the news cycle moves quickly, and we are being conditioned to honestly lose interest in a story from week to week. And that's, as you call it, detrimental to any political progress that we are hopefully going to make with holding people accountable for what they used to be. Because really and truly, was he this person all along? Most likely, yes. But then he has moments of highlights of the highlight reel where we see him, standing atop the pile of rubble during 9/11 and all those things. So we have to be critical thinkers. I think that's the key, Farajii. That's what's not being, taught as prolifically in our schools. People are being conditioned to, take things at face value, but as a community, we cannot do that. And we still have to have long memories so that we get the right people in office, and that we're holding them accountable for when they are not serving our interests. But yeah, he's had a dramatic arc in the last, say, 20 years. And now we're just seeing the true Giuliani. And again, it could cost him his legal law license, his legal career could be over. And I think that's a very high cost to pay.
Hey, I just want to zoom in on the camera. Do you see any tears running down?
Farajii.
I don't have no tears coming down. Take it. Take his damn permit. Take his damn parking permit along with it. All right. I don't have no tears for that. So what? Okay, whatever. All right, hey, Suzette, we gotta take another pause when we come forward. Speaking of Black women in distress, let's talk about the fact that there's a new survey that shows that Black women feel emotionally unsafe in the workplace, which is the leading cause for why Black women are quitting their jobs. We're going to talk a little bit about that because I think you can speak to that, Suzette, right?
Absolutely. Can't wait. Yes, sir.
I figured you could. Stay with it, folks. That conversation is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Hey, Black, I love y'all. All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in Black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Okay, let's talk about a new report that shows that Black women are not feeling emotionally safe in the workplace. This is coming from Exhale, which is a well-being app that's specifically designed for Black women and women of color. They recently published this report called The State of Self-Care for Black Women, and the report found that nearly 40% of Black women have left their job because they felt unsafe in their identity. Wow. Take a look at this, folks. All right, let me share with you what the founder of Exhale, Ms. Katara McCarty, had to say about this latest finding. She said, quote, as Black women, we're surrounded with messages telling us we're strong and resilient enough to manage stress. But this survey proves that we are negatively impacted by a lack of necessary support. Looking at the second paragraph here, folks. She said, Black women cannot fully heal without being fully seen. We need culturally appropriate resources and tools that address the effects of racial trauma on mental, emotional, and physical health. For example, 66% of the respondents to the survey say they overexert themselves to excel in the workplace and to take care of personal responsibilities. In this age of self-care, folks, this is something that we need to certainly talk about. I saw my sister Janelle, you checked in, you were saying this is a new report on an old, long-standing issue, and I think that's a great way to look at this. Black women have been feeling unemotionally safe for a long time in spaces. It's just that now the culture is slowly shifting to allow Black women to be seen, to be heard, and to finally tell their story. Am I right on this, Suzette? I want to bring you into this. Am I right on this? Is it like the culture is starting to be a little bit more accommodating, for lack of a better word, accommodating to hearing the cries, whether it's the physical cries or the emotional cries of Black women in the workplace? Do you feel like now we're at a place where we can have this conversation right now and Black women don't feel further ostracized by other Black folks, by Black men? Are we at a good place with this to have this discussion?
Farajii.
I guess not, Suzette.
We've been new this. I'm like looking at my African American vernacular English, but this is nothing new. This is something that, again, with even in our own sister friend circles, we know to be true. And we have just become more vocal about it. And we've had the space to become more vocal about it. And more people are paying attention. In fact, within my own journey, and I know the ladies in the chat will attest to this, that, I had even had to create my own platforms within, meeting groups and connecting with other ladies through conferences and other things. People wonder why we spend so much time trying to find, places that we are welcome and that where we feel like we belong, that are open to what we present authentically without the code switch, without the heaviness of, the corporate expectations that kind of keeps us in this kind of box where we are feeling and physically affected by feeling this kind of sense of overwhelm on a perpetual basis. I can just tell you from my own self-discovery and from connecting with women, as I said, through creating my own platforms, just to find friends where we could talk in a serious way, in a loving way, and an affirming way about what was really happening, because we have now tried to dispel this trope, this stereotype that has been foisted upon us since before we had our own autonomy here in this country, where this strong Black woman that can take anything, and that you can put this pressure on her, that you could wear her out literally physically, emotionally, and mentally, and she would still be okay. And we have found space now to be able to say loud and clear, no, that is both true within our personal lives, within our communities, but it's also true in corporate settings where I know myself I've had burnout issues. That's why I went out on my own when it comes to the practice of law, when it comes to lack of mentors and understanding the game, if you will, that even in corporate America, you have to have, allies as well as mentors, as well as people who can really open doors for you. And oftentimes we as Black women are at the back of the line when it comes to those type of individuals. Now, whether you could by design, or whether you can argue it's just, whether it's an affinity group kind of situation where people just kind of tend to look out for their own, not really trying to hate on you or keep you back, so to speak. But nonetheless, we have these scenarios in our lives where we're unfulfilled and we're overworked, and we have these high expectations placed on us by everybody, from our families and loved ones, rich aunties, from, the parents who expect us to help them and take care of them, to, being the first and only sometimes college graduates and the most successful. When we think about, I'll take it back to movies that we've had in the Black culture, where we look at the professional Black woman and all her issues. Well, we have these issues because we have so many external forces that are hostile to who we are and who we want to be authentically. But yet we must put on a mask and show up every day and go get that check. And we're doing it at rates higher than ever on our own when it comes to relationships. And it's just wearing us out. We're tired of, I think Yvonne Orji, the comedian, said, we're tired of getting, fibroids and sitting at home, crying all day because of the stress. So Black women are making the statement and people are finally listening. We're getting up and leaving. We're working on our own. We are the #1 small business creators in our country for a reason, because people are looking at their environment and saying to themselves, is it worth it? Should I be sitting here feeling like this? I know there is a modicum of stress that comes with working. We're not, ignoring that fact. But in fact, we feel different layers and multi layers that our counterparts may not experience when it comes to the heaviness and the emotional and mental health toll that certain work environments can place on us.
Let me just throw this out there. Cindy, you checked in, Cindy D, and one of our great culture crew members. You said Black women haven't been totally safe since slavery. Damn. We have a long history of feeling that way, especially when we are in mostly white spaces. We have to act different and be different. Can we be us? Yeah, I think you can, Cindy. You just have to dictate the space. You have to set the parameters on what that looks like. And I think that's my question to you, Suzette, before we take our next pause, is that first, as Black men and as Black people, should we push back on this trope of Black women being strong? I'm gonna do that. Should we start pushing back on that? That way we don't add to the pressure that y'all may be feeling.
So when it comes to understanding whether we can be ourselves, I disagree that we can be ourselves. So there is always the presence of the stereotypes that we do not want to be. So we do not want to be overtly assertive because that's seen as, masculine, and that we are, operating in a place of aggression and, not being the feminine leaders that we ought to be. So oftentimes we overcompensate in ways in how we speak, how we read an email and take 5 and then answer it, how you are recognized for what you're doing in terms of the comparison with our counterparts. If they don't speak up, they might still get recognized. If we don't speak up, we're probably not going to be recognized. So we have to take extra steps that our counterparts don't have to. So you might not be able to operate just as you naturally would, because you are kind of seeing the challenges that others may not have present and having to overtly and preemptively think about how you're going to navigate so that you are not seen as a threat, as loud, as, attention seeking, as not lazy, because that's another thing. They give us more work knowing that there's nobody more hardworking than a Black woman and more loyal than a Black woman when it comes to your company, whether it comes to, showing up and just getting the work done. I've had in law firms, white male counterparts looking to me I'm like, no, you do it. Something wrong with you? No, you set the hearing, you go. And there's also the gender aspect of it. Sometimes it depends on what type of industry you work in. So I don't think we can always show up as ourselves. In fact, I think more than likely, many of us are not showing up as ourselves so that we can survive and even sometimes thrive, or at least progress in the corporate ladder in that climb. But most of us are trying to wear the corporate mask and survive. So the presence of your hair, how you look, and how, again, your body language speaks in a different way from your counterparts because of the color of your skin, how much melanated cells you have in your body. It is a constant dance and it is draining. It is tiresome, and it oftentimes leaves us, as this survey has shown, in worse, mental health scenarios than our counterparts, and we're not going to be doing this forever. This is one life we have to live. So stepping back and stepping away is becoming a more frequent option.
What I see happening, and as we take our next pause, I see happening, this will shift the job market tremendously. If more Black women are coming to this realization that their mental health, it takes priority over the almighty dollar, then that's going to shift. It's going to shift the job market, and it's going to shift the conversation about relationships of work within, relationships, whether it's male and female, same-sex relation, whatever the case may be. Because if a woman is in her soft girl era, y'all gotta follow me in this. Once a woman starts to get in her soft girl era, then it's going to cause the conversation to be like, okay, so somebody's got to pick up the slack for Black men, right? Somebody's going to have to fill in the gaps. Because even though y'all might be in your soft girl era, doesn't mean that you don't want the nice things or don't want to live a certain type of quality of life. So, it's going to shift the conversation. So as this 40%, and I see it happening here, this 40% is going to slowly start to creep up. And if you get to the halfway mark where 50% of Black women are saying, you know what, enough is enough, I'm going to start my own thing, I'm going to shift gears to another industry, then we're going to starting to see some waves start to happen on the other side. Look, Suzette, we got to take another pause. The crew is all up in this, so we're going to share their thoughts on the other side. Plus, in the next hour, folks, as we talk about this situation, let's talk about the Barbie phenomenon that has taken over the country and how that one movie is sparking new conversations about Black women and empowerment. So we'll have that conversation on the other side. So stay with us. We got a lot to get to in the second hour of The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation, folks. If you missed the first hour, make sure you're a part of Team Replay, as we have some dope conversations from everything about Rudy Giuliani and the conversation that we're going to continue here, which is about a new survey coming from the well-being app Exhale that shows that, according to them, 40% of Black women are quitting their jobs to prioritize their emotional health, as they're showing that a lot of Black women don't feel emotionally safe in the workplace. So we're having a conversation about that. And what does this mean to the job market? What does this mean to relationships? And most importantly, what does this mean to Black women finding themselves in a culture that's telling them to be other than themselves? We've been checking in with my sister, Suzette Speak, who's an attorney and host of the show, The Suzette Speak Show, on YouTube. And folks, we invite you to join us in the conversation as we're streaming live on YouTube right now under Roland Martin. Go into the Roland Martin's page, jump into the chat, and be one of our culture crew members for the day. All right, so Suzette, take a look. Let's talk about this, because you made some salient points. You're talking one from your personal experience, and you're an attorney. People might say, oh man, they don't, once you get to corporate jobs, it may not be as tough as it is in other spaces. But I think that once you get those corporate jobs, it's actually tougher. The further you go up,
yes,
you know what I'm saying? You're running into the glass ceiling. You're running into that level of misogyny and sexism. You're running into a lot of stuff. So let me just share with folks what some of the crew members are saying about this whole situation, especially when sisters are screaming out saying, if this thing good for my health and well-being, it can't prioritize the dollar. Do you foresee, before we go to the crew, do you foresee that this revelation of the importance of emotional health, it will create a major shift in work relations, in the workspace, and in the personal relationships for Black women? Do you see a shift happening as a result of this?
I don't know, Farajii, because it is, this is very loaded, because I think it depends on the generation you're from and how old you are, quite frankly, and whether you can and have the ability to shift. We have evidence that when Black women are married, they tend to be in more egalitarian marriages where the husband and wife, if you're talking about heteronormative, make the same, or more than likely they are also in marriages where they do make a little bit more, often deemed the breadwinner of their pairing. So when we were seeing this type of sentiment that is now much more openly being discussed, whether or not there is kind of the other willing party to meet us halfway, I guess it just depends. And again, I think there are a lot of people who want healthy Black relationships, healthy love. And again, our stress oftentimes as Black women is because we're trying to do it all by ourselves. The very same things that are causing that will oftentimes in conversations be thrown in our faces that, well, we don't want you because you seem too, quote, strong, and that you are too, quote, masculine, or all these other things that we need to be just to survive. Again, is it the chicken or the egg first? Who knows? But these type of, leadership qualities that we end up developing, mostly when we are on our own, can be a very big benefit when it comes to cohabitation or marriage. But oftentimes we have to find willing partners that see it that way, as we know it can be, right? Because we've strategized, we've known the corporate playbook. I feel like one duty of a wife is almost a coach, like a life coach, when it comes to like, okay, if you want to go for it, bruh, we're basically at the job together. When I see my friends who do have the luxury of a partner, right? Because that's the other thing. I don't have the luxury because I got to break bread for myself. So if you do have the luxury of having someone to do life with, you can strategize and make these calls where we're going to put more effort into his career or even her career, depending on the choice of either partner to go out there and go hunt. But yeah, not everybody has that luxury to be in their soft girl. So this is a wonderful, I think, concept, a new concept that for Black women, again, saying it out loud so that other people hear it, that other people notice that this is what we want. A lot of folks are waking up to it, later in career, mid-career, late career, where they're like, wait a minute, this life is much more than me visiting an office. There's much more that I want. But again, depending on the age and stage where you develop this epiphany, your opportunities vary. Let's put it like that. So we have to be very careful that we start to share this ideology earlier instead of just pushing kind of one way of womanhood, right? Where there's always like, go get your money, girl, be independent. Yes, we've always placed that burden on Black women, and with reason, right? Go be able to do it on your own. But we also need to balance it. I think there's a lack of balance sometimes in understanding the importance and the benefits of partnership and understanding where we to family and family building and dynamics, and how you may not be making a choice, but your outcome is going to be made because of what you're doing now when it comes to the career track, et cetera, et cetera. So walking and chewing gum, seeking that soft life, if you will, while also going to work and battling, where they say like the gladiators. Just shout out to Shonda Rhimes, right? So we're used to doing that because we've had to do it. But if we had a choice, ladies in the chat, let me know. Would you choose to do it?
Hell no. No. Let me tell you.
Once you wake up to that fact, you like, why am I doing this? And to what degree? I'd rather raise the family. So it's really important that we started to talk about this. And I'm so glad it's coming to the fore now, so that women of all ages can really evaluate what, do I really want? And does my life reflect that?
No, let me tell you something. And I'm just saying, because I'm hearing it more and more, Suzette, which is why I wanted us to have a conversation about this. I'm hearing it more and more. I think a lot of sisters are I think a lot of y'all are just at your wits' end, like having to bear the brunt of so much. Not to say that Black men aren't willing or aren't able to step in to help, lighten the load a little bit, but it's just, I hear it. I mean, we already know that there are a lot of Black households that are female-led households in the Black community, right? That men aren't present. Not to say that, again, this is not no shade on men in general. It's just the fact. I'm just talking about the facts. So I think a lot of sisters do want a soft life. You know what I mean? I think a lot of sisters are tired of the quote-unquote the struggle, especially in the workplace. They gotta, y'all gotta assert your identity every step of the way. You got to, climb, jump through hoops of fire just to say what you want and just to get the basics. I'm not even talking about you saying, oh, I want the corner office, I want a limo driver, I want all of this stuff, I want this person back. I'm talking about for the basic stuff.
I'm talking about just starting salary, basic
starting salary. Workable, I mean, a livable salary.
You. Absolutely.
You're talking about livable salary. You're talking about being seen in those meetings at the table. That when you speak up, your ideas are going to be taken seriously and not just being used as fodder. I'm talking about that when you walk into the room, those men in power and authority aren't looking at you as a sex object or something to play with, but more looking at you as a partner. They're looking at you through the lens of equity.
Over scrutinized, pardon me, Farajii, for your work in the office. Where are you going? The microaggression game. We didn't even get to the microaggression game, where you could take your water break, but you watching me take mine. Where you could take, and again, there's implicit bias there. Some would also call it, implicit racism, where people don't realize they are overly analyzing your behavior and what you're doing on a daily basis, minute by minute, hour by hour, when they need to mind their own business. Again, we're big on mind your business as Black people.
Right.
But when we get into these spaces, again, there's a cultural differential where, again, you have to foresee and proactively think, John didn't see me turn this in. John is going to ask, everybody, knowing that I'm going to turn it in. Where's my work? I have to proactively wave and go to everybody's office. Hey guys, I finished the report. I'm going to give it to John in a few. Are you guys good? And you have to keep this kind of game going because there are people that overstep boundaries all the time when it comes to evaluation of your intelligence and your ability and your drive and the places in which, you know what you're doing, and they're still kind of overly questioning and sometimes openly combating your progression. So it's many layers when it comes to trying to seek what you want. If that is to be a rich auntie, do you, sis? But also surviving that rat race but also trying to balance. Let me stay in my, and this is how they're saying it on the internet now, you're feminine, so that you can seek, partnership or long-term partnership, because that's also what you want. It's a very daunting and tiresome journey. And I'm glad there are now studies that corroborate what we already know. We've been in this struggle, y'all. And it's not because, again, I think sometimes being pushed, get an education, go to college, do this, get your job, make your money, is the one side of the coin that we are fed as Black women wholeheartedly. And we are tepidly, and sometimes some people are saying this is a big psyop to put Black people against each other and thinking that we can't get along and there cannot be real Black love and one party is always using the other party. There is real Black love and we deserve it, men and women. And there are men who are sitting on the sidelines being overlooked as well. I hear it, I can hear it in the chat, but there's a balance that we're not getting in teaching this side of life is also, worth having. And we have to be proactive about it. And I'm glad there are Black women now saying, you know what, I'll give up the money. And again, that's not only going to have an impact in terms of relationships, but our long-term economics, right? The viability of what you lose when it comes to insurance. I have to be self-insured. Another thing, like when I think about how much money I'm spending on other things that other people don't have to worry about when they have a job, there's nothing wrong with going to a job because there are so many other things that you do not have to worry about and other considerations that we have. Again, we're very big on entrepreneurship, but I need us to work too, because again, there's a guaranteed income. There's so many benefits in terms of our overall economic status. So us leaving can be good, but we're also foregoing a lot. So it's not just upside when it comes to these jobs.
I got to take another pause. Sharon Brooks said, Suzette is preaching, pass the plate.
Hello. We're getting in it.
Hey, look, I'm letting you talk about this because I'm not a woman. I can't speak from your experience, but I think it's important that we have this discussion. Folks, I want you to continue to join us as we're streaming live on YouTube, on the Roland Martin's page. Post your comments as a Culture Crew member for the day. Also, we're streaming on Black Star Network and Amazon News. And stay with us. The conversation continues as we right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in Black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
For decades, the tobacco industry has deliberately targeted Black communities and kids with marketing for menthol cigarettes. It's had a devastating impact on Black health. Tobacco use claims 45,000 Black lives every year. It's the #1 cause of preventable death. In the 1950s, less than 10% of Black smokers used menthol cigarettes. Today, it's 85%. Menthol cools and numbs the throat, making it easier for kids to start smoking. Menthol also increases addiction, making it harder for smokers to quit. Menthol cigarettes are a big reason why Black Americans have a harder time quitting smoking and die at higher rates from smoking-related diseases like cancer, heart disease, and stroke. It's time to stop Big Tobacco from profiting off Black lives. An FDA ban on menthol cigarettes will improve Black health, save lives, and protect future generations from addiction. Learn more at tobaccofreekids.org/ban menthol.
Folks, welcome back to the show. We've been having our conversation talking about a new survey that shows that 40% of Black women are quitting jobs to preserve their emotional health. They're feeling like their emotional side is not being addressed, and they're feeling emotionally unsafe in the workplace. We've been talking about this with my sister Suzette Speaks, host and attorney, to get her take on this. And now, Suzette, let's hear what, because people loving what you're saying, because your ideas, your thoughts are resonating with a lot of women in the chat. And so I want to share with you. There we go. We got a little preaching there. It's all good. That's what we do.
Speaking the truth over here.
That's all good. That's all good. But women are checking in. And as we talk about that soft life, as we talk about women saying, you know what, the bag is good, but my mental health is better. All right, Corinna, Corinna Denise checking in. Corinna said, I would love to have that soft life. I take care of me while always taking care of everyone else. And I think, Corinna, that just sums up what the experience of a lot of Black women, that have jobs. It doesn't even matter what job it is. It doesn't matter. Black women have been always have to be in the position to take care of themselves and take care of everyone else, right? Whether it's children, whether it's the elderly, or whether it's grown-ass men.
Now, Farajii, let me pivot, Farajii, because it also goes to our cultural and even religious ethos. So we are taught from the good book about it's better to give than to receive. So when we get in these situations, whether it be work, again, they say, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. And so we're looked at as, if you single, okay, you can do the church, fill in the blank, fish fry, vacation Bible school, Sunday school class, whatever. If you're at work, especially if you're single, no, you can do this and you can do that. So I think there's also that type of workplace bias as well that looks at us as, okay, we should be available. We shouldn't have any other things going on in our lives, especially if we're not yet with a family. You guys can take the brunt. And again, when we are trying to survive and looking at that paycheck, we're thinking, okay, I'm being cooperative. I'm being helpful, but it can be exploited.
And then let me ask you this, and I'm glad you mentioned that. It feels like maybe we need to pump the brakes. And I'm saying we as a people, we as the culture, we need to pump the brakes on some things. It's like, because just as much as there's some stereotypes about Black men, the stereotypes about Black women, some women like yourself and others who might be like, oh man, we need to rethink this stuff. And then some women who are like, no, I want it all. I want you to see me as superwoman. I want you to see me as the strong woman, the woman. But I'm wondering, and it's often propagated, that messaging is propagated through popular media, whether it's music or television and movies and all of those things, that the Black women can handle it all. And then, so what do you say to the criticism that some Black women, because some Black women have embraced that this is a mixed message here? You understand what I'm saying?
Right. Let me tell you what I'm saying. No, Farajii. Sorry, Farajii. Listen to what I'm telling you. We almost are like self-fulfilling the expectation. If we are allowed spaces, like I said, like I've developed where I even had to do my own women's meetup groups just to take off again my heavyweight and burden and say, guys, people look at me. She's an attorney. She's this, she's that. She's on TV. Oh my gosh, she has it all together. And I had to be able to lay my burden down and say to my sisters, my life isn't perfect. It is actually quite stressful. I'm actually trying to reinvent it and re-engineer it so that I actually enjoy living it. And if we get more opportunities to hear what's going on behind closed doors so that people can truthfully express the lack of fulfillment, and even as we're talking about the stressors that are truly burdening us and keeping us in kind of this stage of hyper emotional vigilance, we can then understand that this superwoman syndrome is because we're trying to be what society has told us over the last few centuries to be. And in fact, none of us are really, or some might be happy doing it. That's, I think, the point that you were kind of highlighting, that there are people that step into that suit and they feel like it. But no woman is in Highland. Those women have a lot of support. They have, good partners and others that allow them to fly. But when you're flying solo, it can be such a burden that you're just so used to the camouflage of, I got it all together and no one can see me sweat. And if they do, something is wrong with me. But we're here to say right now, that is in fact damaging us emotionally, psychologically, and even physically. We having all these things going on in our bodies as a direct result of stress. So I think we have stepped away from the ideas that we have to be this. For many of us, it's still a struggle because the expectation is so pervasive, so heavy, so controlling, that we don't know yet that you could take off that mask, sis, and say, I need help. You could take off that mask, sis, and say, no, I'm not working late today. I have my family obligations or whatever else you got going on. Or you could just take off that mask and say, no, can't do it. I'm going home. Sorry. And I have friends who had, just like this article said, had to step away from jobs because their bosses didn't think that they were real, or that they would ever leave, or that eventually, they would acquiesce to what the job wanted. And they said, so sorry, but we need more stories like this to come up and be openly discussed like we're doing here, because it's happening more often than what social media, what pop culture is still saying about us as Black women. They want the superwoman syndrome so bad.
And I agree with you. I wholeheartedly agree with you that, and I want to make sure you get some water. I want to make sure you're good because your voice is important right now. She's like, go ahead and take some water. But I agree with you. I think that a lot of women do feel this way. And I think we're in a time where people are realizing, and men and women are realizing, that the things that we held on to when we were young, the things that we were taught about when we were young, that doesn't apply nowadays. It's a different time, right? It's to be a Black woman in the workplace is a different situation. Our mothers and our grandmothers broke the glass ceiling, but now the next generation of Black women professionals like yourself and others, y'all taking it to the next level. Sharon Brooks, Sharon, you are so supportive, and I want to get to this. This is something you mentioned. You said facts. You said, Sharon, we are actually directing our daughters to run the entrepreneur system as well, in addition to their college education. It's heartbreaking. We do not want our children to go through the same thing. And I think that's why I say that there's a shift that is happening, that it's sisters like y'all, Sharon and Suzette and many others you in the chat, that y'all like, you know what? You teaching your daughters early on, you're going to do something for yourself. You don't have to go through all of the misogyny and the sexism and the emotional distress to try to just for a position or just to get the bag. You find your purpose, you find your passion, and you be happy with doing what you love, even if it doesn't, quote unquote, bring you millions of dollars. It gives you peace of mind, because at the end of the day, we all can recognize this. I don't care how much money you got. If you can't go to sleep at night, if you can't close your eyes and feel at peace with your day, with who you are, what difference does it matter? You're in a nice home, driving a nice car, you eat at the finest restaurants, and you miserable as hell that you got to wake up the next morning to go to work to sustain it.
That's so good, Farajii, because also we have to look at our social connections is what bring us the most happiness. So if we're always pouring into our social connections and they're not pouring back into us, we need to reevaluate. I would include teaching our daughters to date. Oh, y'all mad? Okay. I would include, the relational piece, because again, the social connections oftentimes are grounded in family, right? Except as we get older, we're looking around and our families are aging, and we have not yet developed or had the opportunity to develop families for ourselves in whatever form they look like, right? So I think you have to also engage in that balanced conversation when it comes to, because our social and mental well-being are often tied to social connection, right? Interpersonal connection. So when you forego that in your life, and again, it can be subconsciously or, not even, you're not realizing it by the decisions that you're making. If I'm spending all the time at my law firm trying to get these cases done by myself, I'm not dating. If I'm spending all this time trying to, climb the corner office, if I'm not careful, I'm losing the relational piece that also brings me that joy and that balance, right? And the happiness that we're talking about when you're going home and you by yourself or in your apartment or your house, and you're looking around, what is all this for? Those conversations need to be had in the open. Yes, you can be entrepreneurial. And therefore, we already know studies have shown Black people, men and women, enjoy working from home more because we have to deal with
because we got 6 jobs. Y'all got three hustles. So of course.
We work from home. We got to work on this. We're doing entrepreneurial stuff. So that's all great. But we're built for that. We can do that, but we have to make conscious choices. Do we want to live that life? Or are there other aspects of our life that we pay attention water?
No. I got to take a quick pause. We got to take another pause, but no. Nobody wants to be constantly. I push back.
I don't want 4 jobs. I don't want 3 jobs.
Who does?
But that's what we're being forced to.
Okay, you know what I'm saying?
Now we got the side hustle. Why do I have to do that to survive? Like, it's too much.
Well, one is because the cost of living in most American cities is so damn high that it forces us to get into that space. That's with men and women, right? That's part of it. But the other part of it is that we want to seem so industrious that we want to seem like, and I hear this, even you talked about dating, and I hear women often talk about this, like, what they bringing to the table. I'm a chef, I'm an author, I'm this, I'm a that, and he still don't want me. And it's like, look,
I know we gotta take a break. That goes back into the Black psyche. We gotta prove our worth. But
you ain't got nothing to prove. You ain't got nothing to prove. Hey, look, let me do this, because the next conversation is speaks to this, which is the Barbie conversation, which is why there's a fascination that Black women have with Barbie. And I'm going to share with you just some of the folks, I'm going to share with you just some of the history of that, because it's not just white women going in droves to see the movie. Black women are going in droves. Black women are dressing up in pink, taking their girlfriends, taking their daughters, taking their homegirls, and all of this stuff to see Barbie. But why does Barbie have such a cultural fascination? It's killing at the box office, but more importantly, women are walking out of Barbie feeling like they're finally seen and heard in a long time. Folks, we'll continue the conversation on the other side. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home. You dig?
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in Black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Woo! Oh my goodness, folks. Welcome back to The Culture. I love this show because we talk about the stuff unfiltered. And man, oh man, we've been having some great conversation today talking about women in the workplace feeling emotionally safe. I want to bring my sister Suzette Speaks back into this, man, because Suzette, you've been on fire. Mimi said Suzette is cooking with avocado oil today.
Shout out to Mimi726. I love it. This is a great conversation. Thank you for having this platform, Farajii.
You know, you're getting more progressive when you don't say we're cooking with fish grease and you cook with avocado oil with the toast.
Yes. I love it.
This is our sister. Y'all know how y'all get like, oh, no. I want that avocado toast. I want that avocado toast slice.
Hey,
that's what I want.
We moving on up. Let's go. I love it.
All right, let's talk about this because as much as we talk about the fact of women feeling emotionally safe, this latest craze and phenomenon called Barbie has just like taken over the whole country. Now I know there's Barbieheimer, but we're gonna leave the Oppenheimer movie to the side because Barbie is killing it right now in the box office. The last set of numbers that we checked, $377 million that this movie has already earned at the box office. This is the highest grossing film of the year for a woman director. They had the number broke records being the highest grossing one opening day as a female director. This movie is on track to making a lot of money for Warner Brothers and Mattel. And so the conversation about it is Oscar. The conversation about it is groundbreaking. But even more so, many people are already saying this is not a kid's movie. This is a movie that speaks to the current state and reality of women. And so I wanted to have a conversation because just as much as we see all of the pink and the white and all of the different colors, the movie tries to do its best. And a lot of women have said this, that it has done an amazing job in its representation of not just a white Barbie, but you have Black Barbie, Issa Rae, and Asian Barbie, America Ferrera, Latino and Native Latino Barbie. You have all of these representations of women, and that the movie nailed it on that level of representation. So I wanted to have this conversation about this fascination that Black women have about Barbie, because let me tell you, I did not know that Black women love Barbie like this.
Yeah.
That this was a serious situation. Now, let me share this little piece of history. This is that, and crew, I want to get your take on it. The Black Barbie was not introduced until the 1980s, folks. Black Barbie was not introduced until 1980. And I want to make sure I'm looking at this history. And part of the reason why, if y'all remember what was going on with Black women leading up to 1980, right? Of course, we had the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s. We had the Black Power movement. We had the women's movement that was really getting hot in the 1970s. Black women were still leading the way in a lot of these spaces. And this is what I want to share with you, what one senior dean from UCLA had to say about this. This is Professor Patricia Turner. She said this, and I want to get your take on this, Suzette. She said, while her release talking about Black Barbie, and it was released, folks, with this moniker, she's Black. Let me just share this, making sure that, let's put the camera back on me because I want to make sure that I'm saying this. Y'all remember Black Barbie? When they first released Black Barbie in 1980, they put it out there. She's Black, she's beautiful, she's dynamite. All right, let's keep that. I'm gonna put that and leave that right there. All right, now let's go to what this. Let's go to what this professor out of UCLA had to say about what has happened. How did we get to Black women having this deep fascination and love for Barbie? She said, quote, take a look at this, folks. She said, while her release appeared to be a moment of progress in the toy industry, Professor Patricia Turner, who teaches African American studies at UCLA, said that people should not be so quick to think that the Black Barbie was solely created to address issues with representation. She is a senior dean at UCLA. She said society was rapidly changing in the years leading up to Black Barbie's release, which was in part due to the civil rights movement that happened in the 50s and 60s. Because of that movement, she said Black people started to progress in society and made their way into the middle class, upper class, and more affluent ranks that were available to them. As Black people started to experience upward mobility, Professor Turner said it only made sense for companies to start marketing toward them. Companies that are interested in securing a profit understand that they need to market to that community. So she's talking about the financial benefit of a company like Mattel to issue a Black Barbie. But then there's the cultural side of that they made sure that the Black Barbie was a woman who can serve as an icon, as a symbol of upward mobility. All right, Suzette, what's your take on this? Black women embracing Barbie the way that y'all have been embracing. First, did you have Barbies? Was that a big thing for you in your childhood?
I had a Barbie dream house.
You had the dream house?
It was, I mean, the Barbie, okay.
It was like 16 rooms in that joint.
It was like a cardboard paper house that was 3 stories, and you had to pull the little string to pull up the little elevator on the side. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, but I was just playing with my niece in Orlando. Shout out to Michaela. She's 5. Her Barbie house is super advanced, has so many different little features that I was like, wait a minute, Barbie has come a long way. But when I saw this headline, Farajii, it made me first and foremost think about how far we've come. When I think about the testimony that was given during the 1940s or during Brown versus Board and being argued at the Supreme Court, the psychology of what inherent and open at that time racism was doing. And if we remember the doll test that was performed by Dr. and Mrs. Clark as to Black kids in that time in the 40s and 50s given dolls, white dolls and Black dolls, and asked which ones were good and which one were beautiful and which ones were pretty, etc. And the Black children always selected at that time the white doll. And that, again, was used during testimony during the Brown versus Board of Education that created or did away with separate but equal in our schools. So when I look at the progression of what we're talking about today and the Barbie doll, right, the quintessential American standard of beauty, and the fact that after they finally created a Black doll, how psychologically impacted the Black girl from the 80s onward was in terms of what is beautiful and how they fit into the American framework of the beauty standard, right? So when I think about the cultural references throughout, for example, hip hop, when we talked about last week, or when we talked about Nicki Minaj, and I remember Little Kim had it in her early rap career talking about, Black Barbie dressed in Bulgari, that kind of thing. And it's always been kind of hinted at as this is the standard still. So the fact that we finally in the 80s got something that was, more like us, it was a huge deal. Now we fast forward to today and we can, my nieces have all Black Barbies, right? My first Barbies were white. When I tried to think back at when I got my first Black doll, I couldn't even remember what my first Black doll was. But to see the shift culturally in understanding that Black girls have the right also to see themselves as a part of the American beauty standard, and Barbie reclaiming her, right, or identifying with her is one way in which, we are doing it as a culture now. This doesn't just belong to, a certain group, right? It also belongs to us. And I think that's a powerful statement, thinking back to how far we've come when it comes to dolls and representation of beauty and the psychological impact of a doll that looks like you being also considered, beautiful and desirable.
So what do you say, Suzette, to those who criticize and say, well, why are Black women supporting this doll when knowing, one, that a doll was created because of a company trying to, broaden its market appeal, right, to try to get that. And then 2, when it still puts the woman, as much as Barbie, and I don't understand this, like if people are saying like, oh, Barbie is this like stereotypical like bimbo quote unquote type of woman, but Barbie had like 16 jobs, like you know what I'm saying, like
she had the high heels outfit, she had the going out, she had the
I can't name one job Ken had. What did Ken do?
I don't know. He was the sidekick. And we were always the sidekick. Now, the Black Barbies was a sidekick friend to Barbie. We got to keep that in mind, too.
Right.
That criticism, Farajii, I don't know if I personally can identify with that. Because, again, back to our last conversation, what people want Black women to identify with and what Black women truly may or may not identify with are two different things. So this idea of the quintessential representation of femininity, we identify with that. And again, that might shock some people and make people feel uncomfortable because we are not being given permission to own that. But in this kind of wave, this latest wave of a love affair with Barbie from the Black community, we're saying, no. There are parts of us that resonate very loudly with what some may be calling a stereotype, a bimbo-ish stereotype. No, maybe I do like to do for my man and cook and clean and do other things or have fun and be free in my femininity, in that beauty of fashion and hair. And, you know, Barbie now has hair like this and things that kind of add to all parts of Black womanhood and our expression of femininity. So I push back in saying that we should not have any type of identification with this. I can understand when it comes to the idea that it first symbolized, you know, a whiteness in terms of a beauty standard. But I think there's much more to how Mattel and the doll makers have now tried to incorporate more identities and different looks in terms of the dolls that they offer now, so much so that, yes, we as Black girls also do dream of living this life free, right? As a, you know, representation of that true feminine, what should I say, ideal. And I think that is something that, again, people who don't understand us fully may think that we don't identify with, but this movie is showing that, again, soft life is what many of us are about in this season.
And I think the other thing is before we take our next pause, I think we need to consider the themes of feminism that is reflected both in the movie and the current state of where we are with women and girls in this country. I think that is also the huge draw that a lot of Black women, there are a lot of Black women feminists. I'm reading a book right now. I just started reading, and I think it's a phenomenal book. It's called The Will to Change by Bell Hooks. And she talks about men, masculinity, and love. And her take is that you can't have a feminist movement if there's a complete disregard for men. If you see men as the enemy, as a woman, you see men as the enemy, then you are fighting against yourself. You're working against the very thing that you want to move forward. She was making a point so far, and based on this book, and I'm telling you, I've been like really inspired by this. She was making a point that true femininity comes with teaching men to understand women, and then women understanding men, understand how men think, how men love, and understanding to affirm the masculinity of man, because we are all part of a patriarchal system that keeps us divided and at bay from one another. And I think that's what we're in a space of right now. Like, you can't change a man or anything like that. But one of the big things that I often see is that women say, oh, yes, you know, my identity is not tied to my relationship. My identity is not tied to my job or profession. But patriarchy will make you tie those things to be a part of your identity. Patriarchy will make you see yourself only valuable because of how much money you bring or who you with. And at the same time, on the men's side, it also will cause us to go inward. We're not being emotionally available. We're not understanding the impact that women have made. We're not seeing women the way y'all want to be seen. So it's like this, there has to be a nuance on the conversation about feminism and what does that look like in 2023 America, especially for Black women. And I think there's so much to unpack in it. And it's not just about the Barbie movie, but it does speak exactly to the fact that women want more. Y'all want more. Y'all expect more. And this country is not ready for it. We're not ready for it. So when a movie comes out that speaks to the need that y'all have been holding back, and now you can kind of say, see, I ain't the only one that want this, then that's when the revolution starts. And that's the power of media. That is the power of media, that when you can speak to who you are, when a project, a movie, y'all think about this, a movie creates a movement or helps to spark a movement. That is huge. That is not something you could just overlook and be like, oh yeah, that's just a movie. No. That means that there is a deep-seated need that needs to be addressed. Folks, we got to take another quick pause. When we come back, more conversation. We'd love to hear from you. Post your comments on our chat as we are streaming live on YouTube under Roland Martin page. And of course, stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in Black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been talking about the Barbie phenomenon that has taken over the country and why we're finding that a lot of Black women have embraced Barbie, not just the doll, the toy, but the philosophy, some of the ideas that we see that's been exhibited and expressed in the summer blockbuster. I've been talking to my sister Suzette Speaks about this phenomenon. And of course, I want to get your thoughts as well, crew. So join us in the conversation on YouTube as we're streaming live right there under Roland Martin. Let me tell you, Suzette, I want to kind of get your take on what I was just making a point of, like this idea of feminism. And I think that slowly understanding, that there should be some understanding by men to understand the struggle of women, right, in a very healthy way, not in this social media bullshit that we often see, right? Like, well, men do this and women do this. I think some of that stuff is so toxic and problematic because it gives it only generalizes people. Like if you meet a man or if you meet a woman and you got all of these things in your head about what they are or who you think they are without talking to them, without understanding them, without taking into consideration their experiences, then you do yourselves a disservice. You add to, I think, you add to the divide. What's your take on this?
Thank you. You went kind of deep. Let me just add a caveat. I have not seen the movie yet. So other themes and ways in which people are resonating with it, I may be missing, guys. Put it in the chat. And I did see, I remember the Kenya doll. And it wasn't Kenya. It was
remember Kenya doll.
Kenya
was
best
that
friend.
was Barbie. Was that Barbie's arch nemesis? Let me stop.
No, it was Barbie's best friend. I remember that doll. I'm like, did I have a Kenya doll? Like I can't, like it's blurring together. I remember my first doll was this white red-headed Cabbage Patch. Was my first doll, and I'm trying to think. Oh wow, it took a while before I got black dolls and the like. But yeah, back to your point as to what you were speaking about in terms of Bell Hooks's assessment of feminism, and I just applauded the especially the commentary that you made when it does not, feminism for me should not pit men versus women or remove masculinity as such from what a woman wants in terms of her experience of equality. I think sometimes what you pointed out, the understanding that, men are not going to behave like or shouldn't be expected to just be, guys that are, like women, basically, in terms of how we think and our social and emotional connections to things and experiences that we've had. We have to have, to me, respect and reverence for both our roles, if we're talking again in a heteronormative sense, when it comes to the design of what will lead to a healthy, and a prosperous and a forward moving, life and lifestyle for us both. I think oftentimes we get in these, YouTube and other places in this kind of like death spiral of, women are this and men are that. And especially, I don't know, again, if it's by chance that a lot of Black faces are being, attached to or maybe even taking advantage of, the battle of the sexes because people watch it. If you talk about what women ought to be doing and what men ought to be doing, it's going to get, clicks. So I think to your point, when it comes to understanding, deeper, not the surface level propaganda of what it means to be a feminist, we have to be very careful. I think sometimes, especially as Black women, we are pushed in a direction that I think a lot of our white counterparts don't believe, don't go. I've heard comedians say, white women stopped at equal pay, that's it. And they moved off of other, parts of this dismantle the patriarchy kind of drumbeat. And I think sometimes we drink all the Kool-Aid. I'm sorry, sorry. I mean, I guess I can say that I'm melanated, but we all the way down the street trying to destroy, parts of masculinity that serve us. So I think, we have to be very careful in terms of what it is that we call feminism and be sure it produces the outcomes that we want, right? Both for ourselves as individuals, right? Climbing that corporate ladder or, living whatever life on whatever terms we want to live. But for those of us also who are seeking partnership, that we are kind of promulgating a type of feminism that does not remove Black men from the equation. If what we're seeking to build and who we're seeking to build with.
No, and I think that's one of the big things about this. I think a man shouldn't feel threatened because a woman wants to be heard. wants to
or is
be
smart.
seen, or it's more successful. You know what I'm saying? Like, you shouldn't feel threatened. And I think that the play that we often see, especially now, is that those things are not just highlighted, but they exploited to the point that it makes men feel threatened, right? It makes men feel like, oh man, like now she's up here and I'm down here. And it depends on individuals. I think each one of us have the power of choices to be who we want to be, right? Each one of us has the power of choice to accept what philosophy or what information to use to guide our lives versus other information that we want to toss to the side. Regardless of how the culture is, we have the power, and I'm saying us individually have the power to choose the type of person. And I'm not just talking about your mate, your significant other. I'm talking about you choose what will make up your personal constitution, where you stand, right? And I think that's one of the big things that I get from these larger conversations about Barbie and feminism and all of those things. It's like, we can act as if the world is not changing around us, but guess what? The world is changing around us. And guess what? We're going to have to choose and figure out for ourselves where we stand on how the world is changing. And I always encourage people, look, have a personal politic about everything, but that has to start with yourself. If you're going through this life, if you're going through this world, if you're experiencing all of these things as a Black woman, as a Black man, white woman, and all of these things, and you just get, what I'm saying? Everything is, you don't have a stand on anything. Come on, man. Come on. How are you going to say you're good for the culture if you don't bring something new to the table?
I think what you're saying is very powerful, like that autonomous self-expression. What do I really want my life to look like? And where can I fully express myself? I think to our last conversation, many of us Black women and beyond are looking at, if I get, God's willing, 75, 80 years on this planet, and I know the type of people I was sent to, impact or serve or be around, or what, lights my fire, right? Because again, we're always in the giving posture, a lot of us women, but we also want to put ourselves in a place where others will do for us, right? And that takes, both parties being, self-actualized, looking at themselves. Am I working and doing things that are bringing out my highest and best selves? And if we're not yet there, it's okay to say, I'm still working on it. So I'm going to position myself. So I'm in, the spaces, the movies, the jobs that allow me to do that. But once we start working towards that, Farajii, then we turn around and then we can give, right? Both men and both women. When we have that self-actualization where we have met what we think God's greatest expression of ourselves are, then it's like a whole new level of being, right? And happiness. And again, treat your neighbor as yourself and love your neighbor as yourself. But we got to do what we can first to understand ourselves and love ourselves. And then we can place all these other, labels, if you will, in terms of what we support, in terms of feminism or patriarchy and these things and that stuff. But work on yourself. Work on putting yourself in those environments that nurture you, nurture your mind, body, spirit. And then we go into the other realms ready to take down these walls and other things that we want to do.
That's it. Suzette Speaks, my sister. You are always phenomenal to talk to. You can be seen on YouTube and on other social media platforms. Folks, make sure y'all join Suzette. Make sure y'all subscribe to her page. Make sure you support her on Pantheon and other spaces. And most importantly, let's thank her for being so good for the culture. Suzette, thank you for coming in once again. I always appreciate the conversation.
My pleasure, always. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate y'all watching. See you next week.
See you next week. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. I thank each and every one of you. I want to thank my dynamic team, King Keenan. I want to thank Joel. I want to thank Shannon, and of course, I want to thank all of my culture crew members for the day. I appreciate all of the great insight and the great thoughts that you brought to the conversation, folks. If you enjoyed the conversation as much as I have, make sure you show your support. Go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com, blackstarnetwork.com. and download the app for free. Follow us on social media and give. We are looking for your financial support to continue this platform, to keep these conversations going. So again, Support us at blackstarnetwork.com. That's going to do it for me. Up next is Roland Martin Unfiltered at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we will reconnect for another exciting edition and another exciting set of conversations right here, only here, exclusively here on The Culture on the Black Star Network. Talk to you soon. Peace.